Hey, what's up, guys? Spencer Smith here, host of the Self-Funded with Spencer podcast, sponsored by ParetoHealth, ClaimDoc, and PlanSite. Enjoy today's episode. Oh, we're live. Hey, Seth.
Hi.
Seth Denson, you do this a lot, man. Like, I was just going to ask you before we went live, what is your, countdown preparation in your head to clear your thoughts before you go live?
So a couple things. First of all, I take a deep breath. At least if I'm smart, I do. It's changed over the years. When the first time I went live, it was try to do anything you can to settle the stomach before you get going.
Yeah.
It's still there, right? I mean, every time before you go live, I've twice this today already. You kind of get that little
It's that little swell, right?
It is. Matter of fact, I think when it goes away, I know I'm done. Like, why would I do this anymore if I don't get that? Because that's the anticipation. But for me, it's I kind of say a little silent prayer, like, "Hey God, let me do this right." That's kind of my thing. It's like, all right, let me do this one right. Doesn't mean I've done every one of them right. But, it does kind of settle me a little bit. And one thing I've learned doing live television. And I coach people on this when I'm helping them in their media pursuit, is that your brain will move faster than your mouth most of the time. And that's when you often will get the...
Or you get stuck. It's almost like you don't... I find this sometimes where you have a thought, and it was a good thought, you think, and then it's like, well, how do I exit this thought? Right. I'm going to ramble, and I don't know how to finish, right? So what do you do in that situation?
Well, two things. One is you've got to pace yourself and realize that no matter how fast you think you're going, you're not.
Okay.
And the ability to slow down and put a good cadence, in your mind, again, because your mind is moving so fast, you think either going really slow or you're going really fast. When in reality, you're probably even killed.
Okay.
And slowing down actually gets you in pace with people that are hearing what you say. So for me, when I get to that close the thought, it's slow my cadence down so my brain and my mouth can get back into alignment. A lot of people think your mouth is moving faster than your brain, which is why you do the and it's not. It's actually the opposite. Your brain left what your mouth is saying a long time ago, and now you're trying to get it back on track. And so you're saying the because you're trying to get your brain back to that point. So for me, it is really just making sure that I maintain a good cadence so that my brain and my mouth can try to get... By the way, it's good marriage advice too.
Yeah.
If, make sure that those two are in alignment.
Hey, you show up for Seth's live speaking advice, and then you get a little marriage advice sprinkled in.
Hey, just a little nugget. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. All right, so let's go ahead and announce what we're doing. I think a lot of people obviously are already here, and we're going to give it a couple minutes just for folks to jump off from what they were doing before. But we're doing the first ever, we were just talking about this, very first ever actual live version of Self-Funded with Spencer. So thanks for joining me,
I'm
Seth.
honored. Thank you. Something that I get to do that Chris Hamilton hasn't.
Yeah, hey, take that, Chris Hamilton, whichever camera we're on. He's going to be like, dude, come on, get me on the next one. So I think what we're going to do, just so the audience is aware, we'll introduce ourselves in case we've got some new folks that have never seen us before. And the second thing is we're going to go toggle back and forth between the comments that we got on screen, and then I asked people to leave voicemails. So I set up a Google Voice number.
Smart.
Thanks, man.
You can pre-screen.
Nathaniel's, we did pre-screen the voicemails. And so people will actually get to hear themselves on air asking the question. So we'll bounce back and forth. No other agenda than that. Let's just keep it live, sort of freewheeling. However it goes. But I think it would be cool just to finish the year off with something new.
That's fun. Anytime we can spend with Spencer Smith.
Sure.
It's a holiday gift for me. So
I think I get once a quarter is what the goal. I know I can get Seth Denson once a quarter. About as how often I hit you.
Well, I enjoy every one of them.
So let's do this real quick, Seth, just in case, again, anybody shows up and they have no idea who these jokers are that are talking. Let's introduce ourselves, what we do real quick, and then let's dive into some questions, man.
Fantastic.
All right, so you go first,
So
please.
Seth Denson, currently I'm the head of employee benefits, life, disability, and health at Acrisure. People in the industry likely have recognized the name. If you're not, well, you will. But my most important job is I am Emerson, Arabella, and Connor's dad and Jenna's husband. And fortunately for me, I'm part of a great organization that recognizes my most important job. And regardless of how busy life can make things, they accommodate me to be dad and husband first. And then I also kind of have a little bit of a side hustle in the media world.
People got a flavor of that. So summarize what you do, because I tell other people, I know this guy that he runs a benefits agency, but he also is always on TV, and they're like, what? That doesn't make sense. So tell me about that.
So I like to say that I'm a purveyor of common sense, is really what I try to do. And I end up talking mostly about the business world. Sometimes I get to talk healthcare, although that's where it started. It isn't necessarily where I've stayed. I get to talk about fatherhood sometimes and faith. I get asked just a minute ago, but I told them no, I'm with Spencer Smith.
Thanks, dude.
To do a segment on pop culture. But yeah, I entered into the media world because I really wanted to try to improve my knowledge of what was going on in the business world. So I started writing opinion pieces.
Okay.
Because to form an opinion, you kind of have to do some research and gather thought and all that. And I started submitting them everywhere, and eventually they got picked up by people, and then I ended up on Fox, and then CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, NewsMax, all the rest of them, and I still get to kind of
and the dude, the guy with the cow jacket, right?
And the cow
guy. What do you call?
I will tell you, cow guy clothes. Scott Shalady. If you're in the business world, if you've watched CNN. I grew up, of course, in the late 90s, early 2000s when I broke into the financial markets. And my first job was actually as a junior analyst in the stock market. So Scott Shalady was who you watched to learn.
Okay.
Because that guy, he reads the market like nobody's business. Actually ran the London Exchange for a while. So anyway, now he has a show on RFD TV, and I am fortunate to get to be amongst the cast of people that he has on, because it is a who's who, and somehow I guess they have a slot to fill every week, so they throw me in there.
That's good. Hey, man, well, you did an excellent job, obviously. Clearly, they wouldn't keep asking you back, man. So real quick, I'm Spencer Smith, host of the Self-Funded with Spencer podcast, which is a weekly podcast, kind of about all things benefits with a focus on self-funding. And then my role at ParetoHealth, which is the largest employee benefits captive, which well, I'm SVP of Consultant Development, so do a lot of training, education for the marketplace at large, and then create a lot of content around what we do as well. So, Nathaniel, we'll do, did anybody give so we got a couple of voicemails. So let's start with a voicemail. Hey, call to action, anybody that is listening right now, if you want to comment, have your comment read rather than hear yourself on a voicemail, submit some questions via the comments as well. But why don't we go with that very first voicemail? I think it's probably, was it Shannon? I think so. Shannon McAnulty. Do you know Shannon? She's a Pareto Dallas RVP. Came from the world of, I'm going to screw it up. It's a PBM world. I forgot which one of those PBM places she came from.
Yeah. That and used car dealerships. I'm kidding. I love
Shannon,
PBMs.
Yeah. Well, so we need a mute, right? Yeah. So we're gonna play a voicemail.
Oh, that's right. This is live.
We're supposed to shut up.
My little comments, I got to probably restrain.
Yeah.
Hey, Spencer, it's Shannon McAnulty from Pareto here in Dallas. I know you're a live music junkie, much like myself. Wanted to know what the best concert you ever attended.
All right, we unmuted now, Nathan? Okay, so in case anybody was unable to hear, I think we had it loud enough, but the question was, she said, I'm a live music junkie, so it's Shannon at Pareto. She said, hey, what's the best concert you've ever been to? I have an answer, Seth. Do you have one ready to go?
I could probably come up with one, but
okay, all right, so a lot of people that know me, like really know me. I'm a homer for this band called Tool. It is a rock band, kind of heavy metal band. So I remember probably in high school, a group of us went to see them in Fort Worth. That was my days of a little grungy, some frosted tips, some earrings. And a big group of us went to go see them, and that was kind of at the peak of, I would say, their popularity. And so we were at this crazy concert. I remember there was a girl that was with us, and she was really small. And we were in the pit, Seth, which is a heavy metal pit. Yeah. And everybody from the back is pushing, trying to get forward. And here I am trying to protect this girl from getting crushed. And it was that sweet thing to do at a rock concert. But I think the big thing is that it was just we were all such nerds for this band, and I got to go with 8 of my best friends. Yeah. And that's probably easily one of the top 5, probably, if not the best. So what's your answer, Seth?
You mean outside of the singer-songwriter events that Pareto puts on?
Yes, those are great, fantastic, dude. Those actually really are good.
So interestingly enough, I've done a lot of things throughout the business world, but maybe the coolest job I ever had was in the early 2000s. I worked for a group that promoted concerts called Joint Venture Productions out of West Texas. And we did a lot of, at the time, Texas country artists. So Pat Green, Robert Earl Keen, Jason Bowl and the Stragglers, Cross Canadian Ragweed, some really cool names. Willie Nelson a few times, which was fun. And so I became this. Concerts were kind of a thing. I did them every weekend. I actually worked them. And so I almost became critical of concerts when I would go, they missed the lighting cue or the sound was off, things like that. So I stopped going for a while. But recently, my brother-in-law, Jamie, one of my great friends, also a client, Vince, and I got to go see Hootie and the Blowfish.
Okay.
with the opening act of Bare Naked Ladies.
Okay.
It was outdoors at is it the Dos Equis Pavilion here in Dallas?
Well, I mean, it's
Or
been renamed
I don't
like
know what it is now.
27 times. Yeah.
Anyway, unbelievable, fantastic concert. I went in thinking, oh, child of the 90s, right? I'm going to love this. I did. And it was great because Darius Rucker, who now has kind of turned country, was very clear that, hey, I'm here to play hootie music. Yeah. And he did. And Bare Naked Ladies were great.
What is Bare Naked Ladies?
If I Had $1 Million, that was kind of one of their big hits.
I know
right?
that one. There's one. I feel like there's one, and you don't have to remember it. Yeah.
But anyway, until finally Darius Rucker did sing a couple of his new country hits, a Wagon Wheel and a couple others. But anyway, great concert. The weather, for those of you who aren't in Dallas, that theater, that outdoor venue, it's hit or miss, right?
Yeah.
Because it could be. I've watched Dave Matthews there, and it was 110 degrees, and we all almost died of heat stroke.
Yeah.
And then I've been there where it's been freezing cold. Saw Brad Paisley there a few years ago with my wife, and it was a fantastic concert. But bar none, best concert, at least of recent memory.
Well, and speaking of Dos Equis, before we move on to the next question, that pavilion, my wife dragged me to a Post Malone concert recently, which I can stomach Post Malone. He's great.
Concert, so
it wasn't bad, yeah. But my God, you talk about that the grass field. That thing had every square inch was covered with human beings. Yeah. You couldn't move around. Yeah. Post Malone obviously is super, super popular. And I'm going, even if I get to watch this music, I can't move. It's hot. We're standing next to a tree that's randomly here. I'm like, I didn't
a lot of people don't know this, but I don't really like people. I do, but I don't. Yeah. And I'm somewhat of an actual introvert.
I am too,
believe it or not. Yeah. And so I'm the same way. If I'm at a concert, I want to actually be able to kind of not feel like I'm in this claustrophobic situation where all these people are around. But we actually got to see Post Malone recently at the American Airlines Center, and it was a great concert.
But you probably had seats.
I did.
Yes.
We had tickets to that one. I ended up selling them because I thought about it in the last minute and went, you know what? Our good friend Jonathan Lopez and I we were going to take some folks and go. But anyway.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm at the age now. I'm 41. I'm at the age where when we go to a concert, it's really important. Like, am I sitting down or am I up high enough away from all the craziness that if I need to go to the bathroom or get a drink or just exit, I can.
And I don't want it to be too loud. Isn't that kind of it's a thing? And maybe it is when you get older.
Yeah.
We went and saw Luke Bryant up at Choctaw Casino,
okay.
Which is just north of here in Dallas, if you're not familiar with the area. Anyway, we went and saw, I had great tickets, right? We were in a balcony overlooking. It was fantastic. Our friends at the Texas Legends, which is part of the Mavericks organization, provided those to Jenna and I to go. And it was so loud. You couldn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, I'm that guy now.
It happens to all of us.
I'm like, can you turn the music down? This is a little rough.
Well, my dad used to say, if it's too loud, you're too old. And I'm going, okay, maybe I'm actually
just gonna embrace
too
that.
old. Yeah. Okay. All right. Why don't we go? Do we have any good ones that come in, Nathan? Let's ask. John Butler asks, when are you going to have Paul Seegert on the show? He's a serious force with the self-funded. Do you know Paul? I actually don't know if I know Paul.
So Paul is a dear friend of mine.
Okay.
I am proud to say that Paul is part of Acrisure.
Oh, nice.
And Paul and I have gotten to know each other over the years. Actually, I'll tell us a great story about Paul. And by the way, John's
there you
right.
Go. John's right. Okay.
He's fantastic. So Paul, I was supposed to speak at an industry event.
I think I know that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I do know.
So I was supposed to speak at this industry event that I'm not going to name names, but it was going to be out in California, and the COVID came, and I like how to say the COVID.
The COVID,
the
COVID.
So the COVID came, and it canceled the event, and they rescheduled the event a couple times, and I was really excited about getting to speak at the event, but by the time it got rescheduled a few times, I was kind of over it, and life was happening, and things were going on at Acrisure, and I was getting really busy, but they did finally reschedule the event. It was going to be a small event, and I turned them down. I said, you know what, guys, I can't make this one work. It just isn't going to work.
Right.
And then I heard somebody say, I think Paul Seegert's going to be there. And I went, oh, wait a minute. So I had heard Paul speak on a few podcasts, and I went, I've always wanted to visit with Paul. Paul, I think, is one of those guys that gets it in our business. You'll have him on your story, so I won't tell his life story, but he comes from a background of something that, listen, this is a guy that used to save the world.
Okay.
quite literally.
Okay.
And he just brings this demeanor to the conversation. Now, I'm fortunate now because he's part of Actual. I get to go on sales calls with him sometimes.
Nice.
And I just sit back and I marvel at his ability to articulate challenges and problems in a way that I think is something I certainly try to learn from every day. So, John, great suggestion. Absolutely.
Well, so I guess the answer would be whenever you or Seth make the introduction, and I'll gauge his interest.
That will happen today.
Good stuff.
By the way, Paul's one of those guys too. Every once in a while, if I get asked to do a TV interview, especially if it's specific to healthcare and I just can't make it,
he's your.
Paul steps in, and Paul's fantastic. He does a great job.
That's awesome, man. Why don't we do another voicemail, Nathaniel? Are you queued up, or do you want me to read another one real quick? Yeah, okay. And so give me a thumbs up just so I know we're muted, and then we'll play that.
Hey guys, this is Sebastian Sanchez with RHSB. Question for Seth. I know that you had a TED Talk, and just wondering how that all developed, how that process was. So interested to know. Thanks.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so the question was, in case, Sebastian Sanchez, a friend of mine at RHSB, Roach Howard Smith Barton, great consulting firm, said, Seth, we know you've had a TED Talk before in the past. How did you prepare? How'd that come about? Tell us the story.
So I have to give John Powder, my longtime business partner, a lot of credit on that because I can't remember what year it was, probably 2016, 2017. We were talking about what was going on at the time, GDP Advisors and the work that we were doing. And John and I, we still to this day get together, we kind of plan out the year and think about things and what's life going to bring and what is our life goal. And I remember, I think it was 2016, I said to John, you know what? I want to do a TED Talk.
Okay.
Someday. Don't know when, don't know how, but I'd like to do that. And I think John made it his mission then, as a good business partner would do.
Nice.
Was like, I got to find Seth an opportunity to get a TED Talk. So by the time 2018 started rolling around, I was starting to do some media stuff. I was in the process of writing my book, and my book publisher was tied in with a TED Talk, a group that was putting on TED Talks. And John kind of connected those dots for me and helped make that happen. And so I got to audition. Now, I will tell you, it was the most grueling process I've ever gone through. Of all the things I've done, TV, all of that, there was nothing more, I would say, pressure cooker based than the TED Talk. And so if you do it, be prepared. Like it is a thing. So what you have to do is, first of all, you have to submit in writing what you want your topic to be.
Okay.
And why? Remember, TED is very particular about their topics, although unless you're somebody famous, which I'm not, and I certainly wasn't then, you can get a TED Talk for just about anything. But if you don't, it's like, hey, how could this impact the world? What is the outcome of this? You have to kind of give a thesis and what your solution to that is, right?
Okay.
So I had written, obviously, on healthcare, on how there is a lack of true consumerism in the system, and the system is really rigged against the consumer, but we can actually change that. So I wrote this, I don't remember how many words it had to be, but you wrote it. And by the way, they're very particular about the number of words. If you were one word over, scrapped. So you write it, you send it in. Then they send you a letter and say, hey, that's great, you've gone to the next level. Now we need you to do it in a video and give us a kind of an abbreviated version of your TED Talk. Can be no longer than, I think, 3 minutes, and send it in. Again, it's 3 minutes and 1 second. You're out. Doesn't work. So then you send that in. Then they send you back a note and say, okay, you've made it to the next level. You come in front of judges. So you go into a room, and it is literally a boardroom full of probably 10 judges, high-powered speakers, people that have been in the public sphere speaking for a long time, and you have to give a 5-minute version of your speech, and they time it, and if you're 5 minutes and 1 second, you're out.
Jeez.
So then you do that, and then a couple weeks later, they send you a letter and say, now, here's the great part. I didn't get a letter. I knew a couple people that had auditioned that day because I met them in the green room while we were waiting to audition, and they're posting all over social media about they got this TED Talk. I was crushed. I was devastated. But my son was about to be born, so I was like, all right, we move on to the next thing, right? Life goes on. Then I get a note from the director saying, hey, you haven't booked your hotel room. I'm like, my hotel room for what? For your TED Talk. Well, what do you mean? There was a glitch in the system, and I didn't get the acceptance letter. I had no idea. Now, my son was born, and I'm in the hospital with my wife. That TED Talk is the next day.
No way.
And Jenna, gracious as she was, recognized what I'd gone through to get it. She goes, go, do it. So I did, traveled out, did the TED Talk. Interestingly enough, you have 17 minutes.
Okay.
If it's 17:01, get strapped. And they're even, once you do the TED Talk, it gets reviewed by the TED board. And if it doesn't meet their standard, it does not get published, and you don't own the rights to it. So you can't republish it. You can't do anything with it. They own it. And so it was a really interesting process. I remember my wife asking me one time, how much do you get paid to do this? I went, you
don't get paid.
You don't get paid to do this. She goes, then why are you putting yourself through this? I was like, because honey,
it's credibility, man.
It's a TED Talk.
It's a TED Talk.
That's right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So where was your TED Talk, by the way?
Fortunately for me, thank the Lord, because my son was born in McKinney, Texas. It was actually in Flower Mound.
No kidding.
It's the only time they've ever done one in Flower Mound, and they did it in Flower Mound. So I was able to kind of get back and forth from the hospital to there, and all that.
That's awesome. Well, so that's a great story, and that's a really good question from Sebastian. Well, Sebastian, hope that answered your question.
And Sebastian, by the way, if you do want to do it, by the way, they do pop up all over the country. You can do a search for them. You have to apply like 18 months in advance, though. These things don't just. It's rare that they.
Well, I think if I ever decide I want to maybe pursue it, I'm going to make sure I'm prepared to go through that grueling process, dude. Yeah, I mean, at least with the podcast, I just have Nathaniel show up and we press play, right? So, all right, man. So, do we get anything good on that we want to do? Looks like Rob Tyson has one. So, how does Pareto Health's approach to employee health benefits, thanks for the Pareto question, align with the concept of employee nutrition initiatives, particularly in terms of enhancing employee well-being and contributing to a healthier bottom line for businesses? Well, that's a great question. And real quick, I'll say, I know Rob and I, we've communicated a lot. He's, I think, a fellow kind of keto, low carb, carnivore guy, kind of like we're these contrarian mindset on eating and not the food pyramid, and everything they tell you is, don't follow any government guidelines. We're those kind of guys. Okay. But so how does Pareto approach to it? So there's a couple ways that I'd answer it, and you're familiar with Pareto, so I'll ask you to weigh in too, Seth. I think the big thing is one of the things that we do, and I think we're pretty good at being clear that we are agnostic ultimately to what the consultant brings to the table. So from an administrative perspective, a PBM, from point solutions, maybe a dietary solution that you bring to the table, we will underwrite that conglomeration of things, and underwrite the risk accordingly, right? So how much credence you'd give to a nutrition plan or some sort of wellness program would depend on the actual program. I think more than anything, I would say, if a company is committed ultimately to health and looking at making sure their employees are healthier, ultimately that's something that we would want. Like when we look at protecting the risk pool that we have, if we can do our best and get healthy companies that want to join the captive risk pool, that is an absolute plus. And so we would take that under consideration. This is, I think, the last bastion, in my opinion, in the employee benefits space of trying to bring nutrition and health and fitness and personal accountability into the framework of a group chassis of benefits. There's a disconnect right now, and I don't know how you properly underwrite that or encourage that through a group chassis. So I'd love for you to weigh in on that, Seth.
So a couple thoughts, and full disclosure, I'm a huge Pareto fan. I've been a huge Pareto fan since 2013. I think over the years I've been involved in placing over 100 accounts into Pareto's captives, whether it be through direct or indirect placement, whether it was my book or people that I knew that I worked with. All that to say, the thing that I think is oftentimes overlooked about Pareto that is absolutely, if not the most powerful part of Pareto, certainly up there, is the community that Pareto has created.
Yep.
And the employers that commit to being part of this group captive recognize that they're in this together. And by the way, if you're an employer that's not in a captive, you're in it together with somebody else. You just don't know who that somebody else is.
Right.
The beauty of what Pareto has created is a model where those employers come together and they share ideas. And I think what is oftentimes missed in the nutrition and the health space as it relates to wellness is we try to kind of pull it off of a box of something we've read or something we've heard or something, some wellness company. We don't actually think about our employee population, how they're going to digest that information, because information without action is waste, right? So what has been great about Pareto and what they've done a really great job of is making sure to bring these employers together to share ideas. What worked? What didn't? How did you get your employees to? What would work for your employees based on your population? Because obviously a manufacturer in Reading, Pennsylvania is going to be different than a law firm in Dallas, Texas.
Right.
And so, the ability to bring these different groups together from all different backgrounds and all different employee populations to share ideas is one of the most powerful things. And then the second component of that is, and you kind of talked about it, from an underwriting perspective, and backgrounds in underwriting, is you're not always underwriting the group, you're underwriting the pool.
Yep.
And so from an underwriting perspective, if I'm underwriting the group, I'm going to take some of what they're doing and lend some credibility to it. But I'm going to take the bigger pool. What Pareto has allowed employers to do that wouldn't have the credibility on their own in the market is the ability to kind of put a billboard up and say, these are all the really great things we're doing that normally we probably wouldn't get all the credit for, but because we're part of Pareto in this bigger pool, we do. And I think that's really powerful.
Awesome, man. And I think the specific maybe address to close out the question, we partner with a company called Husk, which I will admit I don't have a ton of familiarity with, but I did sign up for the other day. And that's everything from, discounts on gym memberships across the country. I think there's some personalized nutrition coaching, a couple really cool health benefits that come along with it. I think the disconnect always with wellness for me is you're attracting typically the people that would already be doing most of these activities anyways. And so when it comes down to really truly changing behavior and entrenched behavior in a human being that's very complex and their psychology and history and trauma, it's not as easy as here's a Fitbit or here's a pedometer and let's go change your life for the better. And so that's always been the disconnect for me is how do you connect those two things to really move the needle? And this coming from somebody that has a very, very vested interest in personal health and nutrition. And I think that would be the biggest thing that we could change in our country to improve the quality of healthcare is have a healthier population.
Absolutely.
So I landed the plane. My brain came back
was
with
really well done.
I was like, all right, cool. All right, Nathaniel. So let's go to, why don't we do another voicemail if we could? And we'll go, I'm waiting for the ones that are coming in about our hair, Seth. They're coming.
Well, listen, it's pretty simple for me. I just try to do what Spencer does.
Yeah, okay. Well, we'll talk. Well, I'll lay that out and then tell me if you agree here. All right.
Hey, Spencer and Seth, John Butler calling here. Hey, my question relates to more or less Acrisure. There's a lot of different brokerage firms with a lot of different capabilities around the United States, but very few that can handle a multiple set of solutions for employers. For instance, captives, ParetoHealth, PEOs, ICRAs, self-funded, fully insured, all of that. As Spencer knows, I am kind of interested in people who specialize in different areas and bringing them in on my RFPs for businesses. So I have spoken to some people behind the scenes at Acrisure, including Paul Siegert. I know about the self-funded capabilities, but PEOs and captives and so forth, ICRAs, that's an area of expertise in and of itself, each one of those. And I'm just wondering if Acrisure handles all of that business. Anyway, look forward to seeing you guys soon, and take care. Bye.
Okay, all right. So John Butler got 2 in today. It was good. And Paul Seeger got 2 shout-outs, both in writing and voicemail. So, there was an Acrisure-related question, kind of specifics about the broad capability set is how I would summarize it in case people didn't hear, and that was from John Butler. So how would you respond to John's question?
The opportunity to give a commercial on Acrisure? Wow.
Go for it, man. The floor is yours.
I think what's great about and unique about Acrisure is our DNA, myself included, from a perspective of I own my own agency. The vast majority of Acrisure shareholders all owned their own agencies, built their own agencies, and came together. So the DNA, the unique aspect of the DNA that is Acrisure, is that we are operator owned. We've lived it. We've been business owners. We understand it. We can articulate it. We recognize all the different moving parts that business owners have to face. And we know our market, right? I mean, we're not going to go try to compete with the greatness that is sometimes Aon and some of these large shops that really want to go after those blue chip Fortune 100 companies. We're going to be leaning into that SMB space, that middle market, that small market, and say, here's what we do. And so our ability to look at all the various facets that those middle market and small market clients face, whether that is, do we do ICRAs? Do we have to think outside of the box? They don't have access to all the funding things. Maybe a captive is the right option. PEOs, all those things. What's great is through our acquisition protocol and what we have done over the years of bringing more partners into this and being still partner-led and partner-owned, is that we go out and we source expertise in all these different areas, and then we collaborate together to find out what the greatest thing we can do. Now, I think the last number I saw was the 5th largest brokerage firm in the world. That's huge. The secondary aspect that we did was that back in 2020, we did a multi-$100 million deal with a technology company to develop and build out our own technology, Tolco Labs. And through that acquisition, we now are able to build AI technology behind all of that. So as Seth Denson, can go into our own internal system and say, here's my client, here's what they're facing, all this. I can get through our own system, hey, have you thought about these strategies? Because here are the 17 other clients that are doing that and it worked and they were able to lower costs. So the fusion of what we're seeing in the technology space and the ability to mine data and all that, I think is what really sets Acrisure apart and really has us positioned well in the next generation of what this industry will be.
All right. Well, I have two follow-ups to that because I think you triggered a couple cool, interesting thoughts here. But I wonder, as you was a person that's looking for benefits, let's say head of HR, director of benefits for an organization, how much weight do you put on the organization itself, and how much weight do you put on the capability set or the individual skill set, the producer, the consultant you're working with, right? Because I know some really great consultants that work with smaller agencies, right? So that person's not necessarily buying the name. And then I know obviously great consultants that work with big agencies and vice versa, right? So if you were a business owner evaluating those two things together, how would you kind of weight both of those, the person and the agency?
Ooh. Good question. The answer is yes.
Yes. Okay. Next question.
So you have to weight both of them. And I think for employers today, and I'll speak as someone who hires consultants in other areas of the business, not just employee benefits, but I want to know is how are you going to solve how are you going to help me identify the problems that I don't even know that I have?
Right.
How are you going to help me then solve them? And how are you going to be able to deliver on the promises that you're making? And I think, again, I was a small business owner for a number of years, left a very large firm to start my firm, went through those trenches. And I think it comes back to being honest with your clients. So if I'm evaluating somebody, and I think that employers do it today, you have to be authentic. You have to be very real about what you can and can't do. But those things that you can't do, you have to still help guide them. So I think if I'm an employer and I'm looking at something, I want to evaluate, okay, who is this that is talking to me? What is their area of expertise? What is their grit? Yeah. Meaning, what is their drive? What are they willing to go through? Because life's going to change. It's going to change over the next 12 months. Whatever we think is going to be the best thing today ain't going to be the best thing tomorrow. Is this person that's going to be in the trenches with me and work through it? And do they have the capability to do two things? Put their ego aside when it's not something that they can do, and then secondarily, go find the network of ways to which they can accomplish it. Those two things need to be weighted equally. If that is at a big letter house shop where it's all in, great. If it's not, if it's in an independent who this still has those characteristics and has the ability to navigate the market effectively, great. I don't think you can go wrong with either one of them.
Well, I appreciate you answer that because like you said, you've done both, right? Yeah. And so I'm curious, and then if you find a really good consultant that also happens to be at a very large agency that has almost seemingly unlimited resources to solve the problems, that's a really happy marriage that you can enter into. But as we evaluate, and I've been thinking about this a lot, the role of the consultant morphing over time, right? And really these guys and gals that are becoming almost business consultants in addition to just benefits consultants. I had a really good one on yesterday. I'm just thinking a lot about that role and what the future of the role of someone like you ultimately becomes. I want to come back because I want to get to people's questions, but I do want to later ask your opinion sort of on ICRAs and when, if you have any experience, when you like to deploy those. But let's, why don't we go to... That's funny. I know who this is.
LinkedIn user, is that anonymous?
Yeah, we'll skip that one. I won't out him. But all right, so here, Gabriel, he's actually with Pareto, and I'm not trying to do too much with the Pareto folks, but this isn't a Pareto-related question. Gabriel says, hey, Seth, what does your day-to-day look like at Acrisure? What is your roadmap through your career? I mean, obviously, we'll have to summarize it a little bit, but he's a young guy, really smart, really ambitious. He probably just wants to hear sort of what a day in the life of Seth Denson is.
Well, go back. I think it may have been podcast 1. No, I'm kidding. It wasn't 1, but the first one I was on with Spencer.
You were on earlier.
But so I am beyond routine oriented, and when I get out of my routine, just bad things happen. With Acrisure, my role has me traveling a lot, which is difficult in the routine world to be on the road a lot. I think this year I did almost 40 weeks on the road. That doesn't mean I was gone every day of the week, but the beauty of living in Dallas is a lot of times you can get somewhere and back in the same day. But great question, and I would tell you as a young person or even as someone who's seasoned in this business, the more that you can create repetitive natures of your day, the more effective you will be. And I've tried to continue that in my role at Acrisure as it's continued to expand beyond just being an Acrisure consultant to now leading the entire practice. But for me, we've talked about this, I'm religious about getting up about 4:30 every morning. For my beginning of the day begins almost always the same way. I read, I get up, I kind of see what's going on, what happened overnight, what's going on in the business world, what's going on just globally, what's going on in the U.S., and then I look at what emails came in overnight. Acrisure, we have offices in 21 countries, so typically I'll get an email from somewhere else that's not here in the good old U.S. of A. And so for the first 30, 45 minutes of the day, I do that. And really that kind of just gets my brain going.
Yeah.
And so I've typically read 10 to 20 articles every morning. So I have specific sites that I go to, nothing crazy. I mean, I go to CNBC, I go to Fox Business, I go to a lot of the business sites, Wall Street Journal, USA Today. I try to kind of incorporate a lot of different things. Then, by the time we get to about 6 a.m., about 5:30, I have to actually go get dressed because I do a news segment at 6 a.m. almost every day. So I get up, by 5:30, I'm in the shower, I'm doing that. And then after I do that, I go try to get a good 20 to 30 minutes of cardio in.
Okay.
Before I get my kids up at 6:45, when I'm in town, I get them out. That's my time with them. I drop them off at school. I'm at the office by 8:30 after that, and then it's rock and roll. I don't do lunch, by the way. So, by the way, Sethism tip. Lunch is for lazy. And by the way, you're unhealthy when you typically go to lunches, and you're not actually accomplishing anything. Yeah. So it's been interesting as I've worked with a lot of carrier partners about, hey, you want to go to lunch? No, I don't. I don't go to lunch, and I rarely do dinner because when I go home, I'm with my family. Yeah. But lunch is my time for me. And so what I do is, if you want to meet with me, you want to talk, great. Coffee, do all that. We do that, we get it done. Lunch, I'd go to the gym again if I can, and I try to work. I don't look like I'm doing all this exercising, but I do try, and I go try to get a quick workout in. It kind of resets the day. Here's the key for me, though, that I think was critical, and I didn't learn this till later on in life, and a mentor and coach of mine still to this day, Larry Linney, taught me this, is if you can't get something accomplished in 20 minutes, you probably won't be able to get it accomplished in an hour.
Okay.
So what I started doing about 18 months ago, really as I stepped into this role at Acrisure, is I started limiting myself to 20-minute meetings. So we're used to the half-hour meetings, right? Which typically means for the first 10 of that, we're kind of, hey, how's the weekend? What you doing? You've done it all now. I've given it the spiel over the weekend now 5 times. 20 minutes. We get to it, and by the way, it means that both parties are ready to go, and I don't always start the meeting on the top or bottom of the hour. So it's kind of fun to have my meeting's going to start at 11:20. Okay. And we're going to go for 20 minutes. Yeah. So that is really what I try to do when I'm on the road. I try to be very intentional while I'm on the road with those same types of things. And then because I get up so religiously early, when I put my kids down to bed at 8, I'm typically in bed by 8:15.
Yeah. Wow, 8:15.
If I can.
You are, yeah. So you make me look like I'm a night owl because I make it to about 9:30 before.
Doesn't mean I fall asleep at 8:15. Yeah. It takes me about an hour to kind of wind down in bed, but yeah. Well,
I would say great question. Thanks for giving us the rundown too. I think, Gabe, the one thing I would say, right, is clear. Seth is very intentional about his day, very intentional about his schedule. And the older you get, right, the more you rise up into companies, family and kids enter the equation, the more sort of control over your time. You got to be very, very religious about that. And I couldn't agree more.
If you don't respect your time, nobody else will either. That's what I had to learn the hard way.
There you go. And I'm getting on that. I had a post about that the other day, is how do I artfully and politely say no to things that people want of my time these days.
Again, kind of going back to the question that was earlier about the kind of the consultants and where the world is in that, and I'll tie these two together. There is a difference between arrogance and confidence, a big difference. But oftentimes I think in our industry, it's masked differently, meaning that we won't name names. There's some arrogant people in our industry. By the way, I've probably been accused and at times have been that person. So I get it. I try to eat some humble pie every once in a while. But if you are confident in your ability and you're confident in who you are, you can still be kind and you can be, you can engage in a different way. And so all that kind of tying that previous question back into this one of, I want to look at people that are confident in what they can do, not arrogant. Arrogant means you actually probably don't know what you're doing. Right. And so you try to push this arrogance out there. But if you're confident in what you need to do and what you need to accomplish, then you can be respectful of other people's time. So when I'm saying, hey, we can do 20 minutes, you can be equally as respectful of say, hey, listen, I know that this is important to you, and I think that we can really focus in and knock this out in 20 minutes, so let's do that. Yeah. And that means you're getting my undivided, I don't juggle well, I never have. Those that know me know that I am one-track mind. If I am in something, I am in it and only it. And so for me to say, hey, we're for 20 minutes going to be all in on this, and by the way, if we don't get it done, we'll schedule another 20 minutes.
Yeah, that's all right, yeah. And I think to your point, right, the difference in confidence and arrogance, I mean, I know some very smart people, people you know as well, where it's actually refreshing when you ask a question and the person that you really respect and view as an expert goes, actually, I'm not sure. I'm going to have to get back to you. Yeah. They don't pretend to know the answer all the time to everything. And I think the arrogance would encourage you to try to answer a question you don't know the answer, just so you don't look like you didn't know. And I really appreciate when somebody says, hold on, let me take a pause and I'll get back to you with that. And I've tried to deploy that as a salesperson in my own life as well, rather than pretend or BS my way through something.
I think one of the things that has been a positive outcome of me doing so much national television is there is no room to BS.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is there's this thing called Twitter. And regardless of what network you're on, there are Twitter trolls that are out there waiting for you to say something that's wrong.
Just barely make a mistake.
So they can clip that, throw it out there, and put the right. Yeah. And so you have to be very mindful of. There's no such thing as fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
On TV, you do. You become a meme. And I, every day.
You're like, just hoping.
Don't let that be me someday.
All right, let's go to a voicemail, Nathaniel. I want to try to make sure we get to everybody if we can.
Hey, Spencer, I know you might be a little bit biased, but I want you to discuss the role and impact of marketing and renewal platforms like PlanSite in the self-funded insurance sector. How do these platforms enhance the process for marketing and renewals and the overall client engagement in the context of self-funding? What do you think about that?
All right, so that question was from my buddy Steve Overton. Steve, thanks for sending a voicemail. Founder of the previous company I was at, PlanSite, very, very smart guy. He asked, my perspective, although it'd be a little bit biased, I think you have some opinion here too, Seth. I'd love to hear you weigh in. But the role that these, what we might consider an RFP software or a platform to manage the workflow of an RFP, what role those play, like broader in the marketplace, but maybe even about self-funding. So I'll address self-funding and maybe give you a perspective from Acrissure's lens. Self-funding, I think a lot of people early on consider it to be relatively complicated to understand. There's a lot of moving parts. All of a sudden you get a look under the hood and go, there's an engine and there's a carburetor and there's, the intake and all these things. And you go, well, I used to just hit a button and now I've got insurance, right, as a business owner. So I think the role that these platforms can play in the procurement is sort of tying it all together, right? If you've got a third-party administrator, you've got a PBM, you're looking at a stop-loss carrier, you're bolting on some point solutions, you're considering a network, all the contractual terms and conditions. A software platform can sort of tie that all together and make it a lot more cohesive for a business owner who might be seeing this for the first time to go, oh, okay, now it makes sense to me because you put it together in a productized fashion. And I think, of course, all the streamlining and all the technology, I'm full disclosure, I'm a shareholder there, so I believe in it. But I do think the future of RFPs likely will jump out of Excel and jump into some sort of software, and I think the category is big enough to sustain quite a few players. So what do you think, Seth?
I don't disagree. And as a matter of fact, as you think about where the world of RFPs are going, and I think I've probably said this on your show before, when I had a book of business, it's weird to say that I don't anymore, but when I had a book of business, I was never big on the RFP process. We would do strategic market checks based on what we were trying to accomplish, but we really engaged with our clients to understand the reason for longevity of buying into a concept and leaning into it. But the benefit of the RFP systems as we see them today is twofold. One is when you do go to the market and you do want to kind of see what's out there, you want to make sure that you're being consistent across the market. I know that back from my underwriting days, I would be amazed at the number of RFPs I would get in from multiple brokers that actually had different data. And sometimes the broker would send it in and then they'd send an update and then the update wouldn't be in alignment with what they sent the first time. And so I think what the beauty of what technology is allowing us to do is make sure that we're actually putting consistent data out there. Yeah. And I advise clients of this all the time when I ask them about their RFP process. It's, do you ask your broker to share with you how they're representing you in the market? Because if you're not, you're doing yourself a disservice, because that means you're allowing somebody to take information that you have not vetted to the market and you're not getting anything back on how they're representing you. And in today's world, it is more important to sell a client to an underwriter than it is to sell an underwriter to a client. So you want to make sure that there's consistency of how you're doing that. And I think these platforms will allow brokers and consultants to recognize how they can put this together. There's a lot of moving parts, as you mentioned, especially in the self-funded space. Nothing gets left out. You can be more consistent, and that's how you're going to better serve your client.
Well, and two things I experienced firsthand. One is, no two agencies and no two people within an agency have a similar process for the structure of their Excel-based comparison of plans, right? So what is being missed? Who's sort of responsible for the inputting of the data and the integrity of that data was a big, big thing that I saw across the board. Big agency, small agency, really that was a struggle. But I think too, just like the ownership of, like you said, the standardization of those different policies coming in, getting carriers also to understand how they're being represented to the end buyer. Ultimately, a lot of them release a 50-page proposal in a PDF and have no idea what it looks like on the other end. Now you're inviting them to the table too and say, hey, here's how we represent it. Here are the things that we think are important contractually. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And let's make sure when Lincoln gets compared to Equitable, gets compared to Hartford, that at least there's a level playing field across the board. And that's what I really love about sort of the long term for that. So Steve, great question. Hopefully we answered answered it. If not, text me. Okay. All right. So let's go. So Lynn's asking the hair question, although. Okay, well, let's do two. Let's go ahead and
Lynn's on there twice. Lynn's gonna. By the way, those that don't know Lynn need to go follow Lynn. She may be one of the most brilliant people in our business.
Okay, so follow Lynn Carter, LYNCARTER. But so let's go Victoria first because I don't want to skip over her, and then we'll ask Lynn's question as well. Victoria says, "What is one thing you wish you would have learned earlier in your career?" My God, can I constrain it to one? What do you think, Seth? Do you have one that pops in your head, or do you want to answer that?
There's a lot. So first of all, thank you, Victoria. Victoria also a brilliant clinician in
Victoria
our business.
Stump. Yep.
Yeah, she's a brilliant clinician in our business and a great educator. I think the one thing that I wish I would have learned early on in the career, that's a tough one, is that I think all of us go through a period where we fight imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. And for me, that certainly happened at an early age, and it still does now. And I think for me, it was to recognize that the only way to really squash that is to gain confidence through knowledge and to really apply yourself to learning. And for me, that really happened in 2015, 2016, and I was at burnout mode. And I think it was because I was convincing myself that I didn't really deserve the success that I had and was kind of just waiting for the rug to get pulled out. And when I pulled back the layer of that and realized my biggest competitor is me, that I am my competitor because all I can do is my best. But if I am not elevating what my best should be, then I have defeated myself. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was continuously trying to get better by applying knowledge and seeking out knowledge and really getting diligent about that. I talk about my avid reading. I was not an avid reader before that. I am now, and I still to this day, I've grown to love it. I didn't like it then. And so for me, if I would have gone back early on in my career, I'd have said, hey, guess what? You'll never, ever know it all, but the only way you're going to know it all is to apply it. And by the way, XYZ firm is not your competition. You are. You can only be the best version of yourself. So go find a way to improve yourself, and guess what? You just got better against your competition.
Well, the way you ended is kind of the way that I would answer that question, and I think that's a great question, right? And I think, honestly, there's young people that listen to this podcast up to people that are well advanced in their careers, and so I love to get a chance to maybe address what it would look like for a young person that's looking for some guidance. The thing that I definitely come to understand as I've risen through organizations is that there's an importance of specialization early. You have to have some sort of skill that is transferable that you can prove to that you can do, right? I don't care if that's in Excel. I don't care if that's in HR. I don't care if that's sales. Get good at something, right? Mm-hmm. And if you have ambition to grow up in organizations and become a leader someday, you have to be able to prove that you can do something first before somebody's going to let you lead an organization. And so as I've grown too, I've discovered that you'll specialize less, I think, the more you go upwards, and then you'll be obligated to understand more broadly over time, and really getting often paid for your ability to make decisions or influence outcomes. And so I would say develop a skill. Develop any skill. It doesn't matter what you're doing today. If you're 24 and you want to do something really big in your career, like do something now just so somebody can hire you and is willing to hire you. And over time, I think as you prove yourself in smaller pockets, people will expand the responsibility that you get.
Great advice.
Yeah. Well, then let's not skip over Lynn Carter. She says, all right, fine, I'll ask the hair question. So Lynn says, do you prefer hair clay or molding wax? Follow-up question. Do you blow dry with a round brush? Very specific, and I suspect you might actually maybe have some inside baseball here. So what, you want to go first, or you want me to go?
I don't know where she'd have the inside baseball for me, but I do use a blow dryer. It's the only way to get this hair to volume.
Same.
And as far as do I use clay or molding wax? It's more of a clay, I would think. Yeah. I don't even know what to tell you, but I can tell you. I can't even tell you the brand I use, but I am so I don't change. Matter of fact, the lady that does my hair, who's fantastic, she had me change because she goes, "Hey, that garbage you're putting in your hair, it could actually cause you to lose hair," which is,
it's like you only need to say that once to a guy. And
so she had me change it, and I know the little blue bottle that I use, but it is kind of a clay thing, and so I blow dry it first, put a little bit in there. If I need to blow dry it again, I do it. But interestingly enough, my nephew came and we were this past weekend. He's like, "Oh, is your hair? You got all your hair product?" I'm like, "I have one little tube. All right, let's just be real." But it traveled with my hairdryer.
Yeah. Oh, you travel with a hairdryer instead of using the hotel one.
You know, it's supposed to not damage your hair.
Okay. Oh, man. All right. Well, I don't know if I go that far.
I have totally just lost some stripes with it. Thanks, Lynn.
Thanks, Lynn.
I've lost some stripes. But listen, in my family, you don't typically keep your hair very long. So for me, it's
I won't leave you hanging out on this hill to die by yourself, Seth. So I use 3 different things. I use a sea salt spray, which my hair guy, who's actually in this building, used one time, and I'm like, oh, actually, my hair looks kind of thicker. You know, we're middle-aged men. I think the biggest concern we have is, does the hair actually stay on the top of our head? So I'm like, okay, it makes it a little thicker, do a little blow dry, do a little, I don't know, it's a clay or something. I couldn't tell you the name of it. And then I finished with some hairspray because we're in Texas. So Texas, it's humid as heck in the summer. It's 110 degrees, right? If you don't add the hairspray, then my hair's kind of wavy and falls flat. I don't spend as much time as people probably think on the hair, but I also am very meticulous about it, which is not surprising.
This is a really
I'm glad we got to
episode.
I'm glad we got to talk about this. All right, let's go to another.
Things that Chris Hamilton couldn't.
Yeah. Oh,
come on, I love you, Chris.
He loves you, dude. That's why he keeps digging on. So let's go ahead and let's do a voicemail.
All right, boys, this is Sims. So I'll start with you, Seth. You have to take Spencer's mode of entertainment for the day, and you can't talk about employee benefits. What is Seth Denson's new podcast about? And for you, Spence, you're taking Seth's mode of entertainment. So you're going to be featured on NewsMax. But again, you can't talk about healthcare or employee benefits. What are you talking about on the news tonight? Can't wait to hear your answers.
Seth, you want to take the first part of that question?
Well,
What's
sure.
Seth Denson's podcast about?
I've actually hosted a few podcasts. I've hosted one that was primarily focused in the business world, but I'll say that I couldn't because that's kind of tied into here. And I've hosted another one that was more politics focused. It was called Somewhere in the Middle.
I remember
what
that
I loved
one.
about it. You actually were a guest of mine.
I was. Thank you.
And it was great because what we tried to do is say, hey, listen, there's the fringes have the biggest microphone. Let's not be the fringe. Let's get voices on all sides of the issue, and let's have a rational conversation about it. What we found is we actually agree on most things, regardless of which area. So it would probably be that, but again, especially if it was on Newsmax. But if it wasn't, I would say the Dallas Stars, because I am a huge hockey fan, and or NASCAR, huge NASCAR fan. So I would probably pivot back into sports, and talk about.
Well, and we got to not really see each other, but be across the ice from each other the other day at a Stars game, which was a lot of fun, man. By the way, I wish I'd go to those games more. They're super fun.
A lot of fun.
And they won, too. So I think actually, honestly, so if I'm on Newsmax, I don't know how much Newsmax cares about soccer, but if I could talk about something other than benefits, I could probably fill a half hour, an hour on a soccer segment, right? If they wanted me to review clips of the MLS this past weekend and highlights or talk strategy. Although I don't play anymore, I'm still kind of a student of the game, and I get kind of obsessive about where players are and who won. And it's my one very, very minor outlet that's a hobby that's a waste of time. And I do actually think some people get too sucked up in sports, and I don't let it sort of define my existence completely. But if you said, hey, Spencer, tomorrow we want you on Newsmax for 5 minutes, pick your topic, I'm probably talking soccer.
There you go.
Yep.
I would also do one about my kids, but I think everybody would tune out pretty quick because then it would just become very biased and specific.
Yeah, you wouldn't get invited back, right?
My inabilities, but my attempts to try.
No, it's a dad, life of a dad. That's not too bad.
Our friend Jonathan Lopez had one of those.
He did, What was it? Rad Dad. I was on it. You were on it. Yeah. All right, let's go to, so Lynn got to ask a question. Do we, let's see what this one is. Ultimately, so you kind of asked a follow-up to a 20-minute meeting. I'm going to give somebody else an opportunity to ask a question, though. All right, so this is actually a pretty good one from Nick Belanca. Nick says, are there any other point solutions that excite either of you as we head into 2024? Man, that is a loaded question. I have a few answers to that. Do you want me to go first?
Go first.
Okay, so excitement. I think point solutions as a category, let me not just pick on one particular company, but as a category, and if you would qualify this as a point solution, I'll get you to weigh on it, but direct primary care is my biggest thing going forward in terms of things that I think generally can impact quality of life for the patient, the physician, control the cost of primary care, prevent leakage into the system because of fee-for-service incentives. I think direct primary care categorically is something that I'm really, really focused on. Now, as a point solution, let me get you to weigh in, and I'm going to come back and think if there's any new companies or startups that have really triggered my interest here. but I'm gonna let you weigh
Yeah,
in first.
I don't know that I'll name any names of particular companies. I probably wouldn't do them justice. And, and now, as part of Acture, we've got a great team, a clinically led team.
Yeah.
And so I'll kind of maybe tie that back in. I agree on the direct primary care. I'm in full disclosure, I use direct primary care, and I love it. It's fantastic. But I think that what I am starting to see, interestingly enough, if you think about where our industry was maybe a decade ago, we got very intentional around population health. And then that kind of died off. And I think it died off because it wasn't data-based population health. It was more of, this feels good, this sounds good. The Affordable Care Act is going to allow us to do some things around population health that we weren't able to do before, around premium differentials and things like that. And so I think it kind of rose and it fell really quick. What I am seeing now are more and more of these point solutions coming up that are clinically led. And what I've said for a long time about our industry, is certainly something we're trying to change at Acrisure, is that our industry has historically been financially led. We lead with financials first. And as a result, we are clinically getting worse. We are not getting better. But we should be leading clinically first. And interestingly enough, if you do, your financials, they get better.
Right.
And so a lot of the point solutions that I'm looking at right now and hearing about, and certainly we're building within Acrisure for our clients, are those clinically led solutions that allow our clinicians to really dive into data-based population health that really will take each client, look at them uniquely about what's going on, what are their geographic surroundings, all of that, populate that, utilizing AI and some of what's going on in the technology space to really start to build a unique population health program for a specific client base.
Cool. And I like that, by the way. I think clinically focused approach to, claims are what drive our costs, right? They drive our financials. There's one I do want to shout out. There's a couple that I have a relationship with, and so just out of the interest of not more homerism, I won't. But there's one I've recently become aware of that I'm going to feature on the podcast here in the first quarter that I do think actually is going to make a big splash. And the name of that company is Bexa, B-E-X-A. Have you heard of them by any chance?
No.
So there's a gentleman named Preston Pomical who's at Holmes Murphy that broke away and is now their chief growth officer. Bexa is basically, it looks like a mouse. And it is a breast cancer detection tool. And again, I won't do it complete justice, but it's looking for not differences in density, but elasticity of the breast tissue. So rather than a mammogram, but perhaps as a precursor to a mammogram, can be done clinically on site. You need a room, a closed door. They've got trained technicians. They do like about a half-hour increments. You can do younger women, as well, that maybe aren't clinically indicated for a breast exam at their age. But because it's so I don't want to say invasive, but because it's so simple to do, more women are willing to do it. And I think the early detection possibility with this thing, I think, is off the charts. It possibly could be perhaps a standard of care in the next few years. I really think, especially being married, and you're married as well, this is a very emotional topic as well. My family's been touched by breast cancer, so I think BEXA, Bexa, is one that I am just really excited to feature here in the coming year.
I like it.
Yeah. All right, so Nathaniel, why don't we do one more voicemail? Come back. The hair talk was riveting. Thanks, Angela. Chris says soccer's important. Top 3 books, that'll be a good one. But why don't we do a voicemail here real quick? And how are we doing on time, Nathaniel?
It's right about 1.
Right about 1. Okay, well, we'll wrap up in the next 10 minutes. I know some folks probably got to jump and go back to work. Seth, I'll get you out of here as well. Let's take just a couple more questions before we jump.
Okay, so I have a joint question for both of you. I'd like to know, what brand of makeup do you wear? Because you both have an impeccable face, and it can't just be that great. So what brand of makeup, and how did you learn to apply your makeup? Did your wives teach you? Did you have a makeup artist instruct you on how to apply this makeup? And then moving on to my second question, what do you find to be an acceptable amount of turnover within inside a population in order for a wellness program to truly still remain effective? Thank you both.
Okay.
Loaded.
That was a loaded, that question really, really took me for a loop, right? It's like you had me in the first half, and the second half, it was good. So Dennis Fowler, I recognize the voice. Dennis asked about our makeup routine, which, Dennis, I hate to break it to you, dude, I don't use, other than if I have a pimple that I'm trying to cover up, I use a little concealer. I don't use any makeup, Dennis, so sorry, Seth. I know on TV you do, though. So, really quick.
My wife is jealous of the makeup. I couldn't tell you the brand because it gets sent to me.
Okay.
But apparently it's nice.
Is it like the media-approved makeup or something? Okay.
And I use what's called a beauty blender, which I'm
I don't even
proud
know.
to say now Beauty Blender is a client of ours at
All
Acture now, but which is a filtering. But good Lord, the hair now this.
Yeah, I know.
This is going to haunt this show.
This show is going to haunt you, man.
Kids, look away. So interestingly enough, they flew me to New York because I had to learn how to put on TV prep makeup.
No kidding.
For a while, when I was going into the studio, especially when I was at Fox. Fox News has a studio down in downtown Dallas. It's you wouldn't know it was there. It's actually I won't disclose the location of it, but it's a very just in an office building, a random office building, and you go in there and there's cameras and it's kind of a studio set and all that. And they would always have makeup artists that would be down there ready to get me made up because when you put all those lights on, it does look different. And then when COVID happened. We all noticed, if you ever watched the news during COVID, everybody looked pretty bad. Why? Well, A, they didn't have the quality of cameras, but B, they didn't have makeup artists anymore. And so when we all kind of came back from COVID, there was this recognition that, hey, we still can't be bringing all these makeup artists in. They're expensive, especially for maybe I'm doing a 3-minute hit, so bringing a makeup artist in for that. So they flew me, the network, NewsMax did actually. I flew to New York and I sat down with Jackie, who's a brilliant makeup artist, and she taught me how to apply men's makeup. So that way when I do my morning segment every morning at 6 a.m. about 5:45, I'm in there. You turn on the lights, you kind of got the whole thing. You got to have the lights set up so it's accurate. And I'll tell you this really quick story. I know we're running short on time. Worst ever though. I got done doing a news segment. I was supposed to be chaperoning one of my kids' field trips. My oldest daughter, Emerson's, and I jump out of the studio. I'm already late because the segment read long and we got pushed. And I'm sprinting out the door. I get to the school. And I'm walking in and I grab my sunglasses and you kind of feel the makeup and I realize
you hadn't taken it off.
I still have all my TV makeup on. Yeah. Which by the way, TV makeup is not like it's caked. It's thick because it's got to withstand some stuff, right? The lights. So I go into the bathroom at my kid's school and I'm literally trying to take water, which by the way doesn't always do all that well on makeup, and I'm scraping this stuff off. So it looked like I had just been in a fight with a raccoon by the time we got.
Because your face probably all red.
Oh my God, it's terrible. But anyway, so. Kids, daddy wears makeup.
That's
sometimes.
but only when he's on TV. Only when he's I think. I don't know for sure.
Right, this morning I got up and some days you're like, you know what? It's almost a holiday. We're going without makeup. And usually I'll get a producer in my ear saying, hey, something's off with your lighting. I'm like, it's my face.
It's my face. So I guess the second part of Dennis's question, moving on from makeup, is I think he asked what was the acceptable amount of turnover in a wellness program to still use it or think it's effective. I will admit I don't personally have much experience with that. I gave my perspective broadly on wellness and whether or not they work. But do you have an opinion?
I think my only answer would be is that any amount of turnover is acceptable so long as the wellness program is built for the population.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is, we've done throughout my career, we've done business with companies that had, one company in particular had 300% turnover consistently every year. So you're going, well, I'm not going to build a wellness program. No. You still need to build a wellness, but it's probably not going to be as robust. You're not going to be looking at things that are 3, 5, 10 years down the road. But you could still do wellness programs around ensuring you're getting your regular screenings done, and you can do around education. And, particularly with those, you usually have lower income. So you're wanting to understand how and where to get, so literacy, healthcare literacy, things like that. I think wellness programs have morphed over the years into, it doesn't actually have to be a specific illness or condition we're focused on. Rather, it can be more population focused, and really it can be around literacy and understanding the system and how to navigate it. To me, that is wellness, right? Just give them an ID card's not wellness, but helping them understand the system, that's
wellness. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Well, why don't we let's do one more voicemail and we'll do one more online and then we'll call it a day. But I appreciate everybody that's sticking around a little bit long. Go ahead, Nate.
I am going to cheat and ask 2 questions. This is Pat Moore. Gentlemen, I love that you're doing this, and Merry Christmas. My first question is, how much time do you guys think and put towards what you're going to wear every day? Both well-dressed gentlemen, I am curious your process, and I think the world will be interested. Second is, in the employee benefits arena, do you think the brokerage community should brace for being paid less in the next 10 years? Do you think that's a thing, or do you think it's actually going to go the other direction? I would love both of your opinions. Merry Christmas, gentlemen, and thanks for doing this.
All right, so that question was from Patrick Moore. Patrick, I love him. He's a great dude.
Great.
I know you know him as well. So first he asked about how much time we spend getting dressed. So we've covered hair, we covered makeup. I guess we'll close the loop. I don't spend that much time. Honestly, I lay out what I think I'm going to wear in the morning if I know I need to dress up. If I don't dress up for the day and I know it's mostly internal meetings and I don't have anything that I need to be dressed up for, in the morning and go, what's clean? I mean, I'm really not that complicated. Most of the time people see me, I'm wearing a jacket because of the podcast, and that's it. That's the extent of it. So you have a little bit more, I'd say, scrutiny. So do you spend a little more time picking out? Okay.
I have an amazing wife who is very talented at making sure that I don't look too stupid. Even today, I walked out and I looked and she gave me the,
That's funny.
Okay.
Thanks,
because
Jenna.
she will very quickly say,
Yeah.
It's curated well. So for me, it's just jump out and get it. And again, because I get up early and I do a news segment. Typically, by the way, on my 6 a.m. segment, I'm wearing pajama pants. So there's your little insider.
Oh, yeah.
Don't visualize that, but I am. And then, when I'm done, I go do my workout and then I actually get ready for the day. And then at the office where the studio is, I have a closet with other suits in the event that I get called to do a last minute segment or something like that.
Okay. All right. So let's answer the benefits related question. The second one that Patrick had, which was, should the consulting community, so the insurance brokers, consultants, brace perhaps for being paid less in the future? Maybe there's maybe a specific motivation behind that question, but do you think, generally speaking, that consultants are going to be squeezed in terms of their income?
I think that if you are not bringing value that you can clearly articulate and be accepted, then yes. If you are a commission-based broker that has been able to hide behind that, get ready. It's going to change. I have and I tell all of our consulting producers at Acrisure this, and anybody else that I consult with is, good work ain't cheap and cheap work ain't good. And if you can't find a way to be confident in that, then you're going to get less for what you do, or you're just not going to be all that great at it. And so I think if we think about what the broker actually does get paid for what we do, if you are bringing value and it is X percent of what the overall cost is, then you should be able to articulate that value in a way that a client would go, well, that's a no-brainer. I would easily pay you. And if I get into a situation where I'm up against somebody else and they're saying, well, they'll do it for less. And I'm like, well, what part of are you willing to give up? I didn't realize you were looking for lesser work. Because again, the margins are fairly similar across our agencies in the industry, and so if it's not a margin game, then what is it? That means that they're absolutely going to cut something if they're able to do this for you. So I think for me, it is be confident in what you're able to convey your value is. Don't ever devalue your value. And if you can do that, you should be able to get paid equally as to what you're getting paid to.
Yeah, and I think I would actually answer that kind of the inverse of Patrick. I don't think getting paid less is the concern, at least from the vantage point that I sit. I think responsibilities are going to continue to grow at what is being expected by an employer out of a consultant. And you're no longer an insurance broker. You're no longer shopping between a couple bukas and, sliding, an Excel document across the desk. Your responsibilities are going to grow. So should compensation for the really solid ones grow commensurately with that? Yes. Consolidation is going to continue to happen, but I don't see the role of the consultant becoming less important over time. I actually think the role of a consultant is going to be more important to the strategy of the businesses overall.
Yeah, about 10 years ago, I made a statement that the things that we do today for free, we will soon charge for, and the things that we charge for today, we will soon do for free. And I think that we're there. Okay. Meaning that placing insurance, pretty much going to do it for free now.
Yeah.
The carriers are trying to get away from commissions, the MLR, structure and everything that they're trying to do, as they should. By the way, if you're a really good consultant, you should not want your pay to be commensurate on the premiums, because you're actually in conflict. You have
agreed.
So I think that if you're going into a prospective client or a client, you're conveying, this is the work that I'm going to do for you the other 360 days of the year. This is what you're going to want me to do. You should be able to charge for that. You shouldn't give that away for free. And then, by the way, I'll place your insurance for free. Because if I do all that other stuff, that part should be pretty easy.
Yeah, and I think technology will enable, we mentioned one earlier, but there's other technologies that help just everything from procurement to the placement to the storage of the client's details so that they can be sourced when needed for servicing issues. All that stuff's going to be relatively automated from start to finish these days. And so now, like you said, you're really going to be focused on what is the strategy you're driving for that business based on their specific needs. Okay, so let's do one more question. We'll finish up with a somewhat kind of fun one and lighthearted one, but top 3 books. Can you rattle 3 already off your head, or do you want me to?
Well, I'm going to want you to go first to see if you mention one particular book.
Well, you mean The Cure?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so The Cure by Seth Denson. I actually...
Okay, you get that one. That's a freebie.
Yeah,
All right,
of course I had that one prepared already. I think it's books that I can recall, and I'm not as avid a reader as you are. I read articles, I read varying topics, but I'm not a great book reader. In the past, though, I've read quite a few that I think have been very notable for me. So The Alchemist is probably, or Alchemist, however you want to say it. The Go-Giver is a big one for me as well. And then the last one that I think, just because of the way I see the world, and I've read it probably 3 or 4 times now, is 1984. That one really just sticks with me as something as, from a cultural standpoint, but also, kind of seeing the future. I think that one really stuck with me, and I'll probably read it 3 or 4 more times before I die. What would you say?
Seriously, Go-Giver would have been on my top 3 list. I think that Bob Burke, that series, by the way, the whole series, there's like...
I don't think I've read any of the other series.
4 or 5, or maybe not 4 or 5, maybe there's three books in the series, but all of them are fantastic. Yeah. Very similar. What I like about Bob Burke is he writes a lot like Patrick Lencioni. Very parable format, very story-oriented, which is great. It's easy to follow along. So, yeah, the Go-Giver series, certainly top of mind. Anything Patrick Lencioni, to me, also is great. I think that there's two others that I'll kind of plug here. I know you asked for 3. By the way, if you're on LinkedIn and you want, I do keep a list, and I'm happy to send that list to anybody that would want to, hey, I've got some books and different things. So if you are a business owner and you are a small business owner, I think Traction is a fantastic book about, it's a hard read, so I would encourage the Audible version of it, but Traction was one of those that really helped me focus on what we needed to do from a leadership perspective, actual execution. Gino Wickman wrote that. It's a great book. As far as, like I already mentioned Lencioni, there's, I'm trying to think what else. Positive Intelligence. Actually, a great book that came out recently, Dan Crenshaw, who's a U.S. congressman from Houston, wrote Fortitude, former Navy SEAL, and I thought that was a great book as well. I'm trying to think. There's a couple others, but...
You do have a list, because I'm watching you look at this.
I saw the question, I started pulling
his
up my
list is right in...
It's like if I can only mention 3.
Yeah, it's hard to do, right?
And the last one I'll plug, because it's not on my list, but it's going to be added today. There's a book that was written by Larry Linney. I've already mentioned Larry once. He's my coach. It was called Make the Noise Go Away. And I think if you are a business owner or a leader that manages people, it is a critical book to read. It's a very short read, but it's an easy read, and but it's so good about really understanding what your focus needs to be on and all those things that are creating noise for you that take you off of focus, how to actually get out of that trap. So for me, as I stepped into this role at Acrisure specifically, and I went from having 35 employees to really, there's 17,000 employees, and I'm on the executive team, and you really had to get honed in on how to make that noise go away, and that was a great book.
Awesome, man. Well, I think that's a good way to end it, Seth. I will apologize in advance for anybody that we did not get to your question. I think there might have been 1 or 2 voicemails we didn't get to. I think, although a couple of them were also about the hair, so I think we addressed that. Thank God. But then if online, I'll jump in after this and respond to any questions that didn't get responded to on the comments at LinkedIn. But thank you to everybody that attended. Thanks, Seth, for again being my guinea pig on the first live episode of the podcast. This was a lot of fun. I'm sure we'll do it again. But thanks again, guys. Enjoy the rest of your day.